I think we're ready to kick things off. As you can see from our slide today, our conversation today is really around competition. So I think it's an important discussion to have, and I think as we start to go through this, you'll get an idea how this just affects all of us in a way that is a challenge and can affect our profitability. So with that, Hussain, do you want to do some introductions?
Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Hussain Al-Khalaf. I'm joined here with Wayne Lant, who's our VP of Operation. And today's part of our discussions, we're going to discuss the MSP business model. We're going to discuss what's working, where there's some challenges, and where the smart operators are going next. So first, we're going to discuss some of the common problems or issues that our MSP are going through um, from thin margins to competition to lack of control to a few other things. And then we are going to actually discuss the solution and see and talk about how some of the smart MSPs are responding and adapting. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this conversation. So if you guys have any questions, please drop in the chat and we'll get to all of your questions at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Wayne.
Okay, thanks, Hussain. I've been in this business for probably close to, well, over 20 years now, if I really did the math, about 23 years. And when I first started, I was in sales for an MSP and later on became a sales manager for that same MSP. And back then, when you mentioned MSP, people didn't really know what it was. So we had to explain this and the value that an MSP brings to a SMB customer. And so flash forward to today, the estimates are that there's probably somewhere between 40 to 50,000 MSPs in the United States alone. If you look worldwide, that's probably closer to 150, 200,000. And then every year, Dado Kaseya, they do this survey of MSPs. And one of the things they do is try and identify key challenges within the MSP industry. And for the last couple of years running, the number one challenge for MSPs has been competition. And it makes sense when you see the numbers today relative to where they used to be. This competition has just grown. It's likely to keep on growing. And that means there's a bit of a commoditization problem that we have here. So the more competition, the more pricing pressure we should expect. So what that means is when I think about the old days, hardware and break fix was the thing, right? And most of us got out of the hardware and break fix because the margins just kept declining and they were thin. And the products that we sell really are commodities. And the brands that we sell don't care about our profitability. They care about getting their name out, their brand out. So they tend to proliferate within the market, putting us even more pressure. And basic managed services have just become very easy to shop. It's not hard for a customer to go find a competitor. There's always one knocking at their door, and the customer can leave with very little interruption to their business. So the thought here is, how do we get away from this commoditization and how do we protect our profits? And the way to really think about this is to shift to a higher value service and a higher value relationship with the customer. And that means becoming deeply integrated into the customer's operations. It means having a really high perceived value in the customer's eyes. And it's generally speaking, if they customer sees it and feels it and touches it every day, they tend to assess more value to the service that you deliver. Excuse me. The other thing that we want to consider is measuring the ROI that we bring to the customer. I think oftentimes we're thought of as an expense and not necessarily as a driver of return on their investment. Secondarily, hard to replace means making the switching costs hard for the customer. If they can shop your service around really easy, are there things that you're bringing to the table that makes that a little bit more of a thing they have to stop and think about? And of course, your branding and your pricing and your relationship with a customer are all things that you want to consider in terms of your go-to-market strategies for how you can build more value into the equation. So when we look at this, competition is not going away. So we have to think about how we outposition them. And I think there's three strategic moves that you can make here that can make a real impact on your ability to leverage out the competition and create higher margins for yourself. And the first one is, I'm just going to call it your brand, your product, right? So when you sell and manage products that are deeply tied to you and your organization, it's much harder to duplicate. If you look at this from the perspective of your relationship with the customer, the deeper you're embedded in the customer's daily operations, the harder you are to replace. And then today, AI is a big thing. So we'll talk a little bit about how you add AI-powered services to capture more of that market. So when we talk about your product and your brand, there's a thing that pops into my mind when I was a young sales rep. We sold Cisco, and I can remember walking into a IT manager's office and showing him all the things we sold and talking about our capabilities. And he mentioned he was replacing his phone system. I said, "Great, I got Cisco, I got UC 300s, I got UC 500s." And he goes, "I already got 5 quotes on my desk. Unless you're going to beat their price, I really don't care to hear about it. What else you got?" Right? So that undercut, any kind of hope I really had in that opportunity, because the quotes were all down and dirty, and there was just no opportunity for me to compete. So the core thing here to understand is that when you're reselling somebody else's service and you're going to compete on price. It's just the nature of the business is the customer is going to see you as delivering the same product, likely the same level of service as your competitor. When you own the service, though, and you sell it under your brand, you get an opportunity to compete on value, and that's one of the key takeaways here is when it's your product, your service, and your value add wrappers around it, you have an opportunity to win and keep your margins high. So you get to set the pricing, right? You get to keep the profit. You own the customer, and customers are sticky because you can customize your services to that individual customer or just simply to be unique in the market. And customers look at that and say, okay, if I'm going to give up this relationship, there's a switching cost here. And the switching cost may just outweigh whatever cost savings I may get from another MSP provider. One of the most brand forward things you can do is white label. So in our world, we've been doing white label now since 2019. So we got partners that are making 60, 80% margins because they've been able to create their own unique offering. Partners deliver the service under their own brand. They use our platform to really help operationalize that. So things that help you manage the business, like being able to quote a customer, track their acceptance of that quote, auto provision that customer onto the platform, and then be able to bill them or invoice them monthly while collecting that revenue with call it a merchant account integration, so that money goes right into your bank account, is a key piece of this. And the other thing our partners do is they've able to create their own packages and pricing, so they get to create some unique things. If they've got a particular customer that they're trying to win, they can create a very unique proposition for that customer or proposal for that customer. And if you're stacking up against a, call it Ring Central or a Vonage, they're not able to do this in the same manner. The other thing, when you start to think about voice is very much a mission critical application in most customers' environments. And if they're shopping your MSP services, they got to pause long and hard and start to think, well, what am I going to do with my voice services? I got to go out and shop that. There's a level of effort that goes into that, meaning they've got to go out and identify some solutions that they think might be the right fit. Then they got to sit through demos. Then they got to go through the process of onboarding into that new service as well. So there's a double lift that they have to go through here that really helps us keep that customer sticky to ourselves as MSPs. Now, obviously, when you have 60 to 80% margins, that's nice. One of the best things, though, is you get that revenue. It's recurring revenue every month. And I got a lot of partners who look back and they say, 3 years ago, I started this business, and holy cow, I can't believe what we've been able to build in this time. So there's really good opportunity if you understand the voice world and want to get involved in it. So people who have traditionally sold in the voice world have sold, I'm gonna call it a Ring Central again, or a Vonage. Those are some of the bigger names in the marketplace, and they get commissions, much lower than the 60-80% margins than you should expect to see if you're white label, but still they get commissions. The downside is the customer has a relationship with the carrier. It's the carrier's name that they're familiar with. The carrier sets the price, and you got to kind of sell around that. And frankly, you're not very sticky, because if they do sign an agreement with Ring Central or Vonage, they can leave you and your MSP service, and they still have their service with Vonage or Ring Central or whomever it is they might choose. So it doesn't benefit the MSP so much to be able to work in these kinds of relationships. Whereas the white label side of things, it's your brand, your identity, you set the pricing. And this is an interesting thing that I see a lot of MSPs do, is that I'm gonna call it a platinum package. They have a platinum package with all of their traditional MSP services, but then they bundle the voice services in there. So it makes it a lot harder for that customer to consider leaving, because they're giving up both their MSP service and the voice service at the same time. Now, I mentioned it's important to sell deeper and to get deeper into the operations of your customer. The way to do this is really to think about how you solve problems for them. High value services solve problems, and customers have a lot of problems that are available for us to solve. So you may hear like a small business owner who talks about, hey, I get a lot of customer complaints that nobody's answering the phone after 5 p.m., but I really can't afford to staff after 5 p.m. I got to pay overtime, or I got to have a dedicated individual, and it just doesn't make sense for me to be, staffed to do that. Or a restaurant. We've all probably called a restaurant during rush time and went straight to voicemail. It's a frustrating experience, and the restaurant manager knows that. Particularly, they get customers who want to call it book packages, or want to make reservations, and there's no one available. So then they move on to the next restaurant to see if they're available. Office managers get complaints like, hey, my receptionists are completely overwhelmed, and I can't afford a second receptionist. It doesn't make sense for me to make that investment. Or in the case of a healthcare practice, you see a lot of healthcare practices have evolved where it's not, one or two people at a desk. It's a full call center with 10, 15, 20, even 30 people who are trying to keep up with patient requests for appointments. But it's not just appointments. It's confirming the appointments. Seem that, this I'm called low value, low complexity call. But the healthcare practice is spending resources on these low value calls that are quite expensive, because when you start to think about people, the cost to have a human do a low complexity thing is really high. So I think when we start to hear these problems, that starts to give us an opportunity for addressing some of these real world problems. And these are common cases of things you're going to hear from customers about some of the needs that they may have. In AI reception, very simple concept, and an AI receptionist can do more than this. But the bare minimum, you expect that they're going to answer some calls, greet the callers, understand that caller's intent, and route them to the right individual to ensure that they get help. An appointment scheduling agent will do something where they get a call, understand what the caller wants, and book an appointment, reschedule an appointment. Then they'll confirm with them, and then they'll that is wholly integrated into the calendar. So you can imagine a dental office. You may have 2 or 3 dentists. You have multiple calendars that agent may need to check. So there's lots of opportunity here to offload some of those more mundane tasks to these agents. After hours is something particularly acute in our business. So we know we get after hours calls, we staff for after hours, but the reality is a lot of after hours calls are quite benign. So all you really want is that agent to capture the details, maybe open a ticket, maybe send an email, but under certain circumstances, you may need escalation. So the agent can help classify the urgency of that call and ensure it gets escalated to a human or on-call agent. On the customer service side of things, you'll see a lot of questions about simple stuff like hours, locations, pricing, or maybe more complex things like policies. And in tech support area, you'll have customers who are calling simply to check the status of the ticket, or they're potentially wanting to create a ticket, get some level of assistance. So a tech support agent can understand the issue, understand the level of importance of that issue. Even if it's a high profile customer, they can have special routing in place to handle that. Probably one of the bigger opportunities is order status and lookup. So just the first thing that comes to mind is like an e-commerce site. We all want to know when our order is shipping, when we're going to get it. But even something as simple as something is in a process, right? Let's take I make a appointment with an electrician to come out and do some work, and now we're 3 or 4 hours into the day. I haven't heard from the electrician. I may need to know that electrician status and intended ETA. So how does this integrate in your customer's business? I think is a key piece to understand. So voice AI agent takes the call, determines intent, and then takes some action mid-call. A lot of the use cases that we described here do involve business applications. Could be a CRM where we're looking up a contact, maybe validating that contact is an existing customer and could take a next step. Additionally, things like calendars where we've got for scheduling, we have to know what's the calendar availability. Creating a ticket again may require some verification of who that individual is, understand the nature of their issue, and then appropriately capture that issue and any resolution that customer may have attempted, and then create a ticket with that. SMS, an email. We all need some kind of, way to know when somebody's contacted us in after hours. Well, not everybody uses a ticketing system, but how about email? When you get in the morning and you get an email in your inbox that says these were the 3 people who called yesterday. Here's a summary of their reasons for calling. Here was their ask. You get an opportunity then to start your day with good information about who to contact and how to follow up. And of course, knowledge, things like the businesses frequently asked questions, their policies, even product information is captured within this within the agent experience so that the answers that the agent is giving is appropriate relative to that business's policies or call it unique information. So we're typically thought of as MSPs as an expense, a justifiable expense, albeit, but an expense. And our customers generally don't look at their MSP service as a thing that brings them ROI. This conversation flips a little bit. So because you can offer a voice AI agent and there's a need, we see some ability to claim ROI for the service that you would be providing. Just a simple explanation here on this is if that customer has an answering service, they could be paying $800 on the low side, $2K on the high side. Kind of depends on how much calling they have after hours and the nature of their business, but that can be handled at a fraction of a cost. A new receptionist, as an example, maybe 45,000 a year, but that didn't even begin to think about them as fully loaded employees that have benefits and PTO. And then you've got also to bake in this idea that, this is a higher turnover job and you're going to have to recruit and find a new one and train them. And then there's costs that get associated with that. So when we look at what an agent can do, it can handle the basics of these tasks and it could do it well, efficiently and 24/7 without need for human intervention in a lot of cases. So the good news is that we have a strong case to make to a customer about how we can bring additional value to their business here by addressing some problems that they may have and an ROI that may suit their investment needs. One of the first things I tell anybody is if you're really thinking about selling this, in all seriousness, I'd probably try it internally first. Get a feel for it, understand the ROI that you personally get, and then decide to sell it using yourself as the example. Plus, when customers call in, let's just say, somebody calls into your help desk, it's your after hours agent, and they like the experience, well, that's a potential customer there for you. A lot of them will simply just ask you, hey, I like what you're doing here. How do I get one of those? Right? But even if you just think about using this internally, there's the same kind of benefits that we all as MSP would receive, very typical to some of the same benefits that a lot of our customers will receive. So we take like a 15 to 25 tech MSP, we start to see call volume right in the 1 to 2K range. Maybe 35 to 55% of those are tier one calls. There's a lot of variability here, but I'm referencing some kind of industry specifics, and there's several different ranges that you'll see because I think there's a lot of difference in terms of how people operate their business and the types of customers they work with. But just simply being able to deflect 30 to 40% of the tier one volume has a meaningful payback for a lot of us. And that requires no extra, resources, no extra people on staff. It allows your staff to concentrate on much higher value added things and ensure that you're staying on top of your customer interactions in a far more effective way. And one of the other things I'll tell you is it really does help the customer experience, particularly when we think about it's well known in the industry that Monday morning is the hardest morning for MSPs. The most call volume occurs in the Monday AM after the long weekend. People come to MSPs and ask for assistance. And we see that during that peak, oftentimes there's just not a technician available because most MSPs aren't going to staff for the peak. They're going to staff for the average. So what happens here is somewhere between 15 to 25% of those Monday morning calls are abandoned. And so not the greatest experience if 15 to 25% of our calls during our pre-callers are going to a a customer who just gets frustrated and hangs up. So the idea here would be to have the voice AI agent be able to help improve that level of service by capturing that information, understanding the intent of what that customer needs, helping them where they can, and then moving it to a human when they can. So, kind of in summary here, the idea of excuse me, the idea of moving from high value, hard to replace is about this deep integration, right? And we talked a little bit about how you do that. Whether you're integrating to their CRM system or calendars, it's all kind of the same, the business tools that they use every day. It's also visible value that customer gets to see. They get an understanding of how many daily calls our agents are picking up and the value that it's bringing. And of course, you get the opportunity to customize this for your particular customer, which makes it extremely valuable, keeps them as a customer longer over time. And it is not an off-the-shelf product that they can get somewhere else, because it does require a little bit of fine-tuning, a little bit of effort on the part of our partners to be able to install this. But goes a long way to protecting your relationship and enhancing your relationship with the customer. And just a note about our RingLogix platform. So RingOS is what we've mostly built our business on, and this is our model for how you operationalize your business. First, it started as a UCaaS concept, but now it's become part of our FlowbotAI agent concept. And so, whether you have interest in UCaaS or whether you have interest in voice AI agents, or maybe you're just here for the information, and you'll figure out another way to do some of the things we just mentioned. But if you do have interest in learning a little bit about what it is we do, our agents who have integrations to ConnectWise, Autotask, Halo PSA, Super Apps, and Synchro. If you're thinking about deploying them internally, if you're thinking about selling them, there's a white label option, and we're getting set to release what will be our latest release of our agents, which has a very fancy no-code agent builder that I think a lot of you are going to just find very intuitive, and that takes away the need to be a prompt engineer or a real AI agent expert. So the idea that we want is for our partners to be able to offer this with minimum investment of their time, and be able to turn around and produce agents that add value to their customers without the necessity of having to go get an advanced degree in agent building. The other thing I'd say is our pricing is very transparent. One rate, and you know exactly what you get. In our early research, and you'll still see some of the complaints if you go to Reddit or to C2 or some of these other sites. A lot of complaints about what happens after people sign up for a voice AI agent platform. And the extremes of this are people are getting 3 to 4x the invoice that they thought they were going to get. So you can imagine, as MSPs, we can't pass that cost along to our customer. We're kind of locked in unless we've allowed ourselves some kind of room to be able to do that. And a lot of customers don't love that idea because they think of it as risk, right? So we wanted to de-risk for our partners, but we also wanted to de-risk for their customers. And so we give a very transparent price that is a per minute price, makes it very, very easy for everybody to understand. There is no discussions around what LLM are you going to use, how many tokens, and all this crazy stuff, which can really throw the cost estimates out of whack. And then, of course, because our partners are selling to customers, they need a multi-tenant environment where each customer gets their own environment and their own unique configuration. So, Hussein, let's talk about if anybody has interest in getting additional information, where they would start to go.
Yeah. So do you want to cover the questions first? I have a couple questions.
Yeah, yeah. If we got some questions, let's talk about those.
Yeah, just a couple. So first one is, let me open it up. Can you describe, I'm sorry, how do AI agents understand my customers' unique information like SOPs and times they're open?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way to sort of think about this is SOPs and unique information exist in a place, right? So if you're hiring a new employee, you hand the employee the handbook. Employee reads the handbook. Maybe they don't remember everything. The good news about a voice AI agent or any agent is they really do understand the SOP and they can follow the SOP provided it gets the right prompting. Um, but that exists as a document. So simply uploading that to RAG, for example, the RAG will chunk that down and then put it, or I'm sorry, the process is that when you upload it, it gets chunked down and applied to the RAG so that the agent can then read the RAG in real time when there's a need to reference that information. Same thing if you've got a website. For example, on our website, we've got a pretty extensive knowledge base. That's RAG for us, right? We would simply provide the URL, give an understanding of what level depth that agent should crawl so that they don't go too far deep. But at the same time, you don't necessarily always want just a single page. So we allow the agent then to crawl that, and it's the same process. It chunks it down and then inputs it into the RAG for the agent to later use during its discussions with the customer.
Yeah. And what would be your suggestion on how to get started with an agent if I've never built one before?
Yeah, it's a good question. So probably the first thing to do is to familiarize yourself with the basics of an agent. So an agent has three essential components. One is a prompt. It's kind of the instruction sets for the agent and kind of tells the agent what to do. The other is tools. Tools are the things you call to be able to access a third-party system, but it could also be, in our world, we have some generally available tools that do things like warm transfers and cold transfers. So those things will be utilized in a warm transfer as an example. When we want to give a human a summary of the call that agent had with the individual. So those are the things you need to be familiar with. We have an educational process that we've built some online training. We're still working at flushing some of that out. So we've also default to more advanced training, which we do in person. So if this is something that you really have interest in, we bring some of the experts to the table to help you get to where you want to go and learn those components. The last third piece I mentioned, or third piece I didn't mention, and that's RAG. RAG is a very, very simple process, but probably the one thing I just tell you, make sure it's clean, right? And if we've got extensive RAG, you want to make sure that's all current. You want to make sure it's not conflicting in areas because conflicting information can lead to things like hallucinations, like we've all heard about when it comes to agents.
Okay, that's it. All right. The so if you guys, so I see to follow up on what Wayne has said, I see quite a few existing partners here on the on this conversation or webinar. So if you guys have not had an AI agent or used it, please reach out to your success team and we'll set you up with
So
one.
actually, I do see there is uh, a question or maybe more of a statement here around. I mean, this is really a statement around tools. So yeah, and frankly, the statement around the statement around tools is in regards to email. So things like Zapier, N8N, or Make are readily available tools. They have integrations into I'm going to call it Outlook if you're using that, or Gmail, Calendar if you're using that. So the third-party tools are very useful for that sort of thing. Our next release will have more built-in tools. So let's just take HubSpot as the example. If you're a HubSpot user, you'll go to our tools section and be able to pull up very specific HubSpot related tools. Let's just say you want to do a contact lookup, there'll be a tool for that sort of thing. But people who are already doing these things, a lot of them already do this using some tools like N8N or Make or Zapier. And it really does make the process relatively simple. I think it's first understanding what workflow you're trying to achieve. And then it's trying to figure out, well, what is the right tool for the workflow you're trying to achieve? Okay, and that looks like that's all of our questions. Okay, Hussein?
Yeah, so like I was mentioning, if you're an existing partner, would you like to use an agent, please, or set up an agent, please reach out to your success managers, our success team, and they'll walk you through that. If you are not an existing partner currently, you'd like more information, you can either reach out directly to me or just to sales at ringlogix.com, whether it's for Flowbot AI or the UCaaS, our UCaaS platform. I'll be more than happy to, answer any questions, show you a demo, whatever you'd like.
Excellent. Well, appreciate everybody joining our discussion here today. And if there's anything we could do to help you in terms of understanding the competitive playbook that we described with our three call it pillar recommendations, let us know. Or if you're interested in anything regarding our partner programs, happy to help you here. And Hussein will definitely be available to help drive that conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.